She wakes up before the sun every single day, not because she wants to but because life does not slow down for a woman who has no one else to rely on. The room is dark, quiet and still, the kind of quiet that presses against the chest. She listens to the soft, steady breathing of her child sleeping beside her, and for a moment she allows herself to stay frozen, afraid that even moving might break this fragile peace. This is the only moment of the day that belongs to her, a moment where the world is not asking anything from her yet. She looks at the ceiling and feels the weight of responsibility settle into her bones again. It is always there, even when she sleeps. It never leaves her. She thinks about the day ahead, the hours, the bills, the choices, the endless decisions that must be made by someone who cannot afford to be wrong. She exhales slowly and reminds herself that she has survived every day before this one, even the days she thought would break her. Her life was not always this heavy. There was a time when she believed the future would be shared, when dreams felt lighter because someone else was supposed to carry them with her. She imagined laughter in the evening, support during hard moments, a partner who would stand beside her when things went wrong. But life changed suddenly without warning and left her standing alone, holding a child and a fear she had never known before. The fear was not just about money or survival, it was deeper than that. It was the fear of failing someone who trusted her completely, the fear of being responsible for another human life when she still felt unsure about her own. She became a single mother at a time when she was still discovering who she was, and suddenly she had no room for mistakes, no space to fall apart. There was no savings account waiting to rescue her, no family nearby to step in when things became too much. There was only her and a tiny person who needed everything from her: love, protection, food, safety, hope. She learned very quickly that love alone does not pay rent and hope alone does not keep the lights on. The nights were the hardest after her child fell asleep. The house felt too quiet and her thoughts became loud. She sat on the floor, sometimes with her back against the wall, staring into the darkness, feeling the weight of unanswered questions. What if I am not strong enough? What if I fail? What if I give everything I have and it still is not enough? During the day she worked whatever job she could find, work that did not care about her story or her struggles, work that only measured her by hours and effort. She smiled at strangers who never saw past the surface, never noticed the tired eyes or the strength it took just to stand there. She learned to move through the day on autopilot, her body working while her mind constantly calculated numbers, groceries, diapers, rent, every dollar already spent before it arrived. People around her had opinions, they always do. They told her to accept her situation, to stop dreaming so big, to be realistic. They said stability mattered more than ambition. They said she should be grateful for whatever she could get, but what they did not understand was that she was not chasing luxury, she was chasing control over her life, her time and her child's future. At night, when the house finally went quiet, her second life began. After bedtime stories, after kisses, after making sure her child was truly asleep, she opened an old laptop that took forever to start. The glow of the screen filled the dark room and reflected in her tired eyes. She searched for answers, watched free videos, read stories, learned skills from strangers who had no idea they were changing her life. She failed more times than she can remember. Ideas that sounded good in her head fell apart in reality. Plans collapsed. Self-doubt returned again and again. There were nights when she rested her head on the table and cried silently because she could not afford to break loudly. Quitting was never an option because quitting meant teaching her child that dreams belong only to people with easier lives. She started small, work that felt invisible, done in the quiet hours while the rest of the world slept. She practiced, learned, made mistakes, took notes on scraps of paper, whispered ideas to herself like secrets. She carried hope quietly because hope felt dangerous if spoken too loudly. One night an email arrived offering a small opportunity, just one client, just one chance. Her hands shook as she replied. She worked harder than she ever had before, not because someone was watching, but because everything depended on it. When the payment finally came through, she stared at the screen for a long time. It was not a large amount, but it felt like proof that she could build something real from nothing. That moment did not change her life overnight, but it changed something inside her. It gave her permission to believe in herself a little more. She kept going. One client became 2, then 3. Some stayed, some left, some taught her lessons she never wanted but needed. She grew slowly, steadily, learning how to stand back up every time she fell. Years passed quietly without applause. She built her business from a kitchen table, from late nights and early mornings, from determination stronger than exhaustion. There were days she felt guilty for working so much and days she felt guilty for not working enough, but through it all she kept moving forward because stopping was never an option. Sometimes her child sat nearby drawing pictures while she worked, and she wondered if the sacrifice was worth it. Then she would see those small hands reach for her, and she knew this was the lesson she wanted to teach, that strength is not loud, that courage is choosing to keep going even when no one is cheering for you. Slowly her mornings changed. Panic faded and purpose took its place. Fear softened into confidence. The work she did now carried her name, her ideas, her values. She no longer asked permission to live the life she wanted. She created it herself, one decision at a time. She was not famous and she was not perfect, but she was powerful because she knew what it took to get here. She had faced loneliness, exhaustion, and doubt and still chosen to rise. People saw her success now, but they did not see the nights of fear, the tears wiped away before morning, or the strength it took to believe when belief felt impossible. Her child will see it, though. Her child will grow up knowing that their mother did not wait to be rescued. She built a future with her own hands. She turned fear into fuel and love into strength. She did not just create a business, she created freedom, stability, and a legacy of courage. She remembers the first time she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. It felt almost irresponsible, like dreaming was a luxury she could not afford, yet the idea kept returning quietly. Late at night, when exhaustion softened her defenses, she imagined a life where she was not constantly afraid, where her child could grow up without hearing stress in her voice, where mornings were not filled with panic but with purpose. The road to that future was never straight. There were months when everything felt like it was moving backward. Unexpected expenses, clients disappearing, technology failing at the worst possible moments. Each setback felt personal, as if the world was testing how badly she wanted to keep going. There were days she questioned her choices, wondered if the people who told her to be realistic were right, wondered if she was being selfish for chasing something more than stability. But every time doubt crept in, she looked at her child and remembered why she started. She remembered the nights she cried silently so that little ears would never hear her pain. She remembered the promise she made to herself that her child would never grow up thinking struggle was the limit of their story. She learned discipline in a way no book could teach her. She learned how to manage time with precision, how to work while tired, how to think clearly while emotionally drained. She learned that motivation comes and goes, but commitment stays. She showed up even when she did not feel inspired, even when fear whispered that she was wasting her time. As her skills grew, so did her confidence. She began to understand her worth and stopped underpricing herself out of fear. She learned to say no to work that drained her and yes to opportunities that aligned with her vision. It was uncomfortable at first. Stepping into self-respect always is, but it changed the way others treated her and, more importantly, the way she treated herself. There were moments of quiet pride, moments she kept to herself, like when she paid a bill without anxiety or bought something small without calculating consequences, moments when she realized she was no longer drowning, she was swimming, and slowly she was learning how to float. Her child noticed the changes before anyone else noticed, the calm in her voice, the way she smiled more, the way she listened without distraction, the way she laughed freely again. Children feel energy before they understand words, and the energy in their home was shifting from survival to safety. The business grew not explosively but consistently, built on trust and quality and effort. She learned that success does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, disguised as stability, disguised as peace, disguised as choice. She began to choose her hours, her clients, her direction, and with each choice she reclaimed another piece of herself. She still worked harder than most, but now the work felt meaningful. She was building something that could last, something that could grow, something that did not disappear when a shift ended. She was no longer trading time for survival, she was investing time into freedom. There were setbacks even then, challenges that tested her patience, moments when she felt overwhelmed by responsibility, but the difference now was that she trusted herself. She knew she could adapt, she knew she could learn, she knew she could survive because she already had. Sometimes late at night she sat quietly and reflected on how far she had come, not in a dramatic way, just a gentle acknowledgement of growth. She thought about the woman she used to be, scared, uncertain, exhausted, and she wished she could tell her that everything would be okay, that strength would come from the most painful places. She began to understand that her story mattered not because it was perfect, but because it was real, because it represented countless women whose struggles remain unseen, women who carry entire worlds on their shoulders and still show up every day. She realized that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving despite it. Her child grew older and more curious, asking questions about work and dreams and effort, and she answered honestly, not with fear but with hope.